Hello and welcome back to the Fat Dad Fishing Show. I'm your host, Rich Natoli, and tonight we're going to do it's going to feel kind of like a throwback. So we have former co-host John Creely coming back on, the mayor, and we're going to be talking about how to choose a fishing rod. It's going to be a little bit of an abbreviated holiday edition with this Labor Day holiday, and I'm going to apologize up front right now. We have a new dog in the house, and some moron thinks that this is a firework type of holiday for some reason. So yeah, she's panicking, she's shaking. She just bailed out of my office just now, so we'll see if my wife can handle her. But yes, everyone, thanks for coming in. If this is your first time here, thanks for checking out the show. Look, if you enjoy it, hit a follow, hit a like, put a review on any of the podcast applications. If you're listening to it, if you're watching it on the live stream, YouTube, just a like would be appreciated. And of course, let people know about this. We're trying to get a whole bunch of different variety going on this show as we move forward. And we're going to do one of the, I guess, more traditional style, which is the how-to or informational type of broadcast tonight. And that's why John's coming back on. So before we hit that, before we get into that content, I want to go through the sponsors. As always, Great Bay Outfitters on Radio Road in Tuckerton, New Jersey is the kayak shop that you want to be going to. They got everything. Just finished up his Labor Day sale and look, here's the big difference. If you're looking for a kayak, don't be one of those guys that just goes online saying, what should I get? Because I'm going to tell you exactly what everyone's going to say. The exact kayak that they own. And they're not going to think about what you need it for. They're not going to think about anything because everybody always buys the best. And it's just the one that they have. And it's not true. So what Paul does is he actually lets you get on the water and test them out. So make sure you do that. He's got that Garmin Force, right? I think it's the Force is what it's called, motor that you can test out on those kayaks as well. I don't know how much longer he's going to be doing the on the water for the rest of this season, but just came off of 3 days of it. Yeah, so head on down there and, Old Town, Native, and a bunch of consignment kayaks come in and out all the time. So there you go. Great Bay Outfitters, Quad State Tune, Kevin Driscoll, numbers 484-633-5975. So this is for those of you that have Toyota trucks, whether it's a 4Runner, Tundra, all those good things, the Lexus 460 and 470. These tunes will give you increased performance on those engines. You're going to get more torque, horsepower. If you are towing, it's going to make it a lot smoother, a lot more efficient. If you had the 3rd gen Tacoma, it's going to solve the gear hunting issue where it doesn't quite feel like it's in the right gear as you're going down the road. This will take care of all of it. Give Kevin a call, see if it's something that is appropriate for your rig, and he'll let you know one way or the other. And then the last one is me for real estate, Southeastern Pennsylvania. I am now with Weichert Realtors out of Bluebell. I also am in the office in Collegeville, but main office that I'm out of is Bluebell, Pennsylvania. Anything residential real estate, let me know. And I do want to mention, I do have quite the network in neighboring states where I am not licensed, but I can still help you out through licensed agents in those states. Got a couple going on in New Jersey right now. Had one recently in South Carolina. So anything you need, just reach out to me. Number's 267-270-1145. Call, text. Just don't call right now. I mean, somebody might, but I have you on mute. Yeah, so that's it. So listen, we're going to jump right into this. We're going to bring John on the screen, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about why you might want to listen to John. Hey, John, good to see you back,
What's up,
man.
buddy? It's good to be here. It's good to be back. It's definitely been a long time and long overdue, as you said.
Yeah, and a lot has changed. A lot has happened over the past couple of years. But back doing the normal show the way that I was. And look, one thing that's different is when you were on as a co-host, you had Creely Custom Rods. You were building rods for yourself, but now you are one of the rod builders for Advanced Fishing USA. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, what your kind of specialty is, or the types of rods you like to make there?
So it was roughly after I came off the show with you. our friend Dean, who was one of the builders for Advance, was leaving the shop and moving south. Called Mike up, and I was actually just looking for a couple blanks for myself. He seemed kind of shooken up. I was like, all right, well, call me back later on. It's like, listen, Dean's leaving. You think you can help me out with a couple builds? Sure. And it just turned into that. So it became too much for me to keep doing rods under my own name, steer away from some of the decorative stuff and get to build some of the best rods in the world, at least in my opinion and others.
Yeah.
So,
I am I am the utility fisherman, right? I love the decorative wraps, but that's not what I'm looking for. And I'll tell you what, they still look really nice when you're cranking those out for advanced. I've seen the videos of them, I've seen the pictures, and every once in a while you throw a personal build in there, and that's where you really go crazy.
yeah, you have to. When it's your personal build, you have other people looking at your stuff when they find out you're a builder, so you try to showcase a little bit more.
Yeah. So for people that aren't aware, so John's made me a few of my rods. Actually, my two primary fluke rods he built. One's a slow pitch, and one's one that we put together. What we did the cheapest rod possible, and the thing
Yeah.
I love the thing. It's heavy, but I still love it. It works really well. I've caught thousands of flounder on that at this point. But John and I always had this thing where he wanted to decorate my rods. I'm like, can you just make it black? He's like, no, no, just trust me. And then it comes back with all these colors. I'm like, I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it, but it is I'm the utility guy. John is the one who wears the brands and everything almost like designer wear. You're out there with the Van Stalls, you're out there with the beautiful wraps. I just want a black rod.
And it's funny because that is like 80% of the builds anymore that I do.
Yes, yes. Well, it's a whole different market. The custom market is a lot different. I mean, custom is where people are putting in, they're getting, oh, I shouldn't say this because a Century blank, which is one of the most popular that you're going to be wrapping, is a premium blank. But when you get into the pure custom, they're like, yeah, I'll throw an extra 100 or 200 to get it to look exactly the way that I want.
Yeah, and they will. And that's the beauty of a custom rod, and a lot of it is it's tailored to you, and a lot of people don't understand that. It's meant for you, grip size, placement, all that. It really truly it's how you want that rod to be at the end of the day, and you're not going to get that on the shelf.
No, you're not. And that's where I had this long standing thing. And we're going to talk about ugly sticks today because I'm going to bring that up because I have this personal battle against ugly sticks. And it's not that they're not good, it's just they're not good for what people think they're good for,
Yeah.
or they put their biggest selling point as the most important part of a fishing rod, which is the fact that you can't break it. Well, you can break it, but for the most part, it's really tough to break an ugly stick. And to me, that's one of the least important parts of a fishing rod. And I will say right now that for the most part, as long as you have a quality blank, a quality rod, if you break a rod, I'm going to say easily 9 times out of 10, 90 plus times out of 100, it was your fault. It was
100%.
absolutely your fault. Yeah, but the ugly stick, it's more forgiving. And okay, if you just don't want to break a rod, I guess, but I don't think you can catch as many fish uh, with that type of rod in a lot of different applications. Some they're perfect. It is a perfect application, but we'll talk about those when we get to the graphics and we start talking about the power and all that stuff on the rods. So let's start off this way. So John, what is one of the things what is the most important thing that you think people should consider first when they're going out to get a fishing rod? And let's look, we'll talk for 7 weeks if we don't narrow it down. Let's go saltwater and let's talk. Let's start with your favorite species, sheep's head. What's the number one consideration that you think people should have before they start shopping?
You have to find something that's leaning towards that slower tip. You're looking for that parabolic bend in a rod. Yeah, you lose a little bit of sensitivity in that, run there, but at the same point of time, with it being a thinner diameter blank, you should be able to feel a bite. and it's more forgiving on a hook set.
Okay. So you're going basically slower action on them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the rod that I've personally been fishing, and that's one of the companies we're dealing with now at Advance, is JS Company. Um, they're one of Black Hole's competitors. Killsong works with them now, and he's done a phenomenal job with bringing those blanks into the States. He pretty much has set out to make a true moderate rod. The Inshore Supreme Ultralight is what I've been fishing for sheep's head.
Hmm.
That is a mixture of carbon and then an S2 glass tip. So you do get that little bit of a parabolic tendency. But again, you lose a little bit in that sensitivity too. I do feel the bite better because the rod is rated 8 to 15 pound test on braid. So you have to think that that diameter of the butt is pretty small at that point too.
Right.
So the way to describe it is it's a trout rod essentially in the saltwater game.
Well, that to me sounds like a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Instead of those tank rods.
And that has a lot to do with it. It's you have to figure out what rod you're using for what species. Every rod has a job. This one's going to throw top water. This one's better for bouncing jigs on the bottom. This one's better for throwing pieces of metal. There's a rod in every there's a rod for every application.
Right.
You can try and narrow it down and find the best combination for a rod, but it's not you'll find something, but it's not going to do one job perfect.
Right. It's interesting. Do you remember way back when Chris Balaban was on and we were talking about this? And he made the comment, it sticks with me today. He's like, you have to know, like, you're going to buy this combination of rod and reel, and you're not going to use it except for this one specific time of year. And, he's talking like you'll use it 1 week and
Yeah.
that's it. And then just stow it away because it has no other application. And it's very true. Now, I tend to use one rod for a lot of things, but I use it imperfectly for each. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's I'll use my fluke rods for tog, which
Yeah.
is that's probably the dumbest thing that I do, but I still do it, and you lose a lot because it's a different hook set. Sheep's head and tog, I think they're a lot closer. Uh, but the way that you present to them is a lot different. You're using a lot different tackle,
Yeah.
terminal tackle. But I want to put this up there and show people. Let's walk through your sheep's head and let's take a look at this graphic. And you want to just kind of walk people through what this means on the screen right now. And for people that are listening to the podcast, this is just a simple graphic that's showing the different powers of rods. So you have the extra fast, moderate, medium, and slow rods, and it's showing the bend of them. So, John, you want to just kind of walk people through this so they understand exactly what this is showing?
So yeah, when you're looking at the bottom, we're describing the actions of the rods. And when you hear someone say, "Oh, I have a moderate or a moderate fast rod," the picture depicts on how that's going to bend. Going through this graph, like we were talking about, is the slow pitch rods. You have a tendency to lose that sensitivity as you go up the graph. You gain more sensitivity. But with the slow pitch rod, you're not going to be casting like you would an extra fast rod, and that's what it was designed for.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the most important things for people to think about. So it seems kind of counterintuitive when you say that when you have the faster rod, it's more sensitive. But what you're seeing in here in this graphic, you can see that the slow pitch is it's bent almost in half. Well, it is bent in half. So this is showing the loaded rod and what it looks like and where the bend is. So what you're seeing on the slow is it's bent in half, and this is where it's into the backbone of the rod. So that's where the power of this rod has transferred fully into that lure or the hook that's in the mouth of the fish. If you go all the way to the right, there's the extra fast. It doesn't bend as much. So that's where you see people, they assume you don't have a big fish on because there's not a lot of bend in the rod. But that rod all the way on the right with that slight bend is fully loaded. that's got it's fully into the backbone, so it's closer to the tip. It so John dropped off. He'll be back. But as you get a bite or a strike, you set the hook. Think about the distance that the rod has to travel in order for it to hit the backbone. So extra fast, when you go to set that hook, it's an extra fast hook set because the rod only has to bend that far before you transfer the power from the backbone of the rod into the hook, which means it's going to be more sensitive. You're going to feel it quicker in the backbone. Whereas the slow pitch all the way on the left, it's going to have to bend significantly before you're going to have any of that power transfer, and you really don't feel much on the tip of a slow pitch when it's when it's just kind of bouncing on the bottom or anything. It's not nearly as sensitive, and it's very slow. It just means you have a very long sweep to set that hook as compared to that extra fast or a fast. Anything that I missed on that, John?
No, that pretty much nails it.
Okay, so let's go back to the sheep's head. So you're talking about what rod you're using for sheep's head. Where is it sitting in this graph here?
They consider that a moderate rod.
Okay.
However, I mean, I don't know if you see me fishing that rod when we were out not too long ago. When that rod is bent over, I mean, it looks like a slow pitch. It's
Yes.
realistically, it's not rated for what we're doing out there with it, but it gets the job done.
Yeah. So, and part of that is the point of that is that it's not rated for that size fish. It's not supposed to be for that size fish. So the fish is pulling it well beyond, and it's deep in the backbone at that point.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So, that'll happen. You put 4 pounds of lead on an extra fast, it's going to bend. It's going to
Yeah,
bend further. It'll also break before it goes too far. In many cases, not all. Some won't break for quite a big bend, but you have to look at that. So what you have right up here is the ugly stick is on the left,
yeah,
which means to set that hook, you have to do those monster freshwater bass hook sets in order to get that power into the lip. So hopefully this is making sense to people, and you start to think about how you present your baits, what your fishing tactics are, and what type of rod you're using. Because right now, John, most people just buy fast and they just think
yeah.
that that's the best thing. So are there specific applications that you would say you would want to use an extra fast or a fast versus a moderate?
I mean, in a fast application, I would be looking more into a surf rod because you're looking for that distance to get that plug out, past the bar. Um, my moderate and, your medium rods, I'm looking more at my bottom fishing at that point, off a boat or kayak, doesn't matter. Um, that's where I'm going to use those because I want that little bit of forgiveness in that hook set. If, hey, we are out there fluking and it, those fish, if they're biting, they come back 4 or 5 times. I mean, you should have, set the hook by the fourth time at least. But,
Should
that
have.
moderate rod, that's going to help, hey, I got that extra little bit of forgiveness on the swing and I'm going to be able to, send that hook home.
Yeah. I'll tell you, for fluke, my favorite rod now is the slow pitch that you made me.
Okay.
I've switched over to using that as my primary. So I have that, I naturally have, people have seen my videos, or many people have seen my videos. I tend to set the hell out of the hook anyway on a fluke. But I have to now with that slow pitch, because it's not getting any power until I really get it all the way back into that backbone. But I really like the moderate, but what are you using for top water?
For top water, the one rod that I do like the most is the Century Weapon, especially if you're pitching, smaller spooks and stuff at docks. Um, that is going to be leaning more towards the faster side of the rods.
Yeah.
It does have a softer tip than most of our Century rods, but the nice thing is you still have that fast action rod, and it's just easier to get the distance, a little more accuracy into where I want to pitch it at, and that gets me where I need to be.
Yeah. There's always the debate between the extra fast and the fast for the top water, but you bring up a really good point. It's something that a lot of people don't talk about, is the accuracy.
Yeah,
And you think about it, the bend on a slow, let's just, you wouldn't use slow for top water. So let's leave
No.
that out. Let's just say moderate. When you're casting, again, to get your power, you got to bend that rod similar, in reverse to what you're seeing on the screen right now. That's where it's going
Yeah.
to get into the back. It's a little different because if you go along the spline of the rod, it's actually a little different. It's not quite the same, but you got to bend it more to get that power, which also means that distance between that tip and that rod where it's going straight still, that's the play that you have. That's where the inaccuracy can come, right? Because
Yeah.
you have to swing. It's like for those golfers out there. It's why it's more difficult to swing a driver than it is a pitching wedge because of the extra distance. It's not nearly as forgiving. So the faster you get, generally, the more power you're going to have in that launch of the lure, and the more accuracy because that tip is not, you know, waggling left and right depending on how you sweep it. You can, some people, like when I cast, I have a very inaccurate cast motion. It's not consistent. I don't know if people can see it, but like I'll roll my wrist sometimes, and if it's on a slow or a moderate or a medium, it's definitely not nearly as accurate as fast because the travel between the tip and that straight part of the rod is just not as much, so it's not off as much. But what
Yeah.
about the hook set?
As far as your hook set, it's 9 times out of 10 when we're fishing bit for bass. You know they set the hook themselves. Just give it a little bump and it goes. They'll eat anything. But in reality, you do have to drive it home just a little bit more uh, if they don't pick it up right away.
Yeah, so this is always a debate and this is where it is. It's almost exclusively a top water debate between fast, or let's say moderate not moderate, moderate fast. So in between the moderate and the fast is typically where people start that know what they're doing with top water. I shouldn't say it that way because there's some outstanding top water fishermen that fish moderates and mediums, but
Yeah.
uh, generally speaking, you're going to see people moderate fast up to extra fast. And it's tough for me to find a consensus on which one's best for the hook set, right? It's usually, well, I do this because of the casting and the accuracy, but the hook set, it's different on each. So what do you want? Like, I mean, do you know what would you recommend for somebody that's fishing? Let's say they're walking the dog. Is there a certain action that you would suggest for that?
Me personally, I want the moderate fast. That's me
Okay.
personally. Casting a few of the new JS surf blanks too. I feel like, that type of thing, like walking the dog, throwing a metal lip, seems to be a little bit better with those rods. Not
Right.
knocking Century or anything, but that's just how I've always fished, has been moderate and moderate fast. I have
Yeah.
my Century rods that I love for certain applications, but I've seemed to have grown towards these JS rods. And again, I can truly speak on it. It definitely bends and feels like a moderate fast rod.
Okay. So, by the way, I apologize for the dog in the background. Somebody decided to, it was like an M100 that I just felt sitting here. Um, so okay. So you're looking more the moderate fast. What do you think about the action though? Because again, when you have your rod out there, you're working the top water and you're walking the dog is the example I like to use because you're actually working that lure and you have to have some finesse on it or else it ain't walking, right? It's going to be skipping. It's going to be, I don't know, most of the time it's skipping. For me, I find it difficult to use an extra fast rod. I have one extra fast rod that I got for top water and I don't use it for top water anymore because it's like every little move of your wrist, you're now into the power of that rod and it just starts skipping and I can't walk it as easily. So do you find it easier to walk with those slower, or I shouldn't say slower, but the slower actions?
Yeah, when you're, let's just say you're, you know, picking between fast and moderate, to me, it's going to be a little bit easier with the moderate because you do have a little bit more flex in a rod. But then again, now you're losing that hook set. It's
Yeah.
not going to be as easy.
Right. There's so many.
It could go on for days.
Yeah, that's why this is. I personally love these types of discussions because there's so many ways to do it, and I can only share what I like and what other people have told me about what they like. For example, if I the majority of my cast and reel fishing, so subsurface is going to, which is subsurface, is going to be with a jig head and a soft plastic on it, right? Like I don't use a ton of swim baits or glide baits. I'd like to use more glide baits, but I just don't. Um, so what I'm using for those, I'm using extra fast on those, and I find that that works really well because you have a swim action typically on those baits. So they're naturally going to be swimming, and it allows me to get a lot of action into them with just a tiny movement of the wrist as I'm reeling it in. Whereas if you're throwing a medium, it's, I don't know, it just feels like 90% of your movement is just getting the flex in the rod so you can get the power down to the lure to move.
And that's pretty much it. It's again, it goes back to like you're saying, it's that little bit of flex in that rod does help you move that bait around the way you want to.
Yeah.
Better, I'm sorry, I have it backwards. It's the
No.
extra fast because of the stiffness how you have it, as opposed to that moderate or medium moderate area. It's you're losing it because of the sloppiness.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was looking at the
yeah.
slow
Looking at it
when I was
backwards,
talking about
yeah,
it. Yeah. Um, okay, so you're looking more in the moderate to moderate area, moderate fast for the sheep's head, and
yeah.
you're doing that specifically because of the style that you're fishing. What are you using for tog?
For Tog, it's pretty much the same, and it goes back to, like we said, that hook set can be similar in the way you want to drive the hook home.
Hmm.
At least with Tog, they have those fat rubbery lips, so you have to send it through them. The sheep said you're trying to send it through the jaw.
Right.
So again, yes, it's a similar bite in that aspect where you want to send the hook home the same amount of power. So again, I'm looking in that moderate to moderate fast area.
Okay. I'm going to agree. I use actually a moderate fast for sheep's head, and for tog. It's a moderate fast. Um, I just think it's easier, and I love getting in the backbone fairly quickly on them. Um, but I also, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I like getting into the backbone quicker on those. The biggest thing is for the tog for me because the sheep's head aren't necessarily going for cover. They're not going to go into rocks and they're not going to extend their fins and get stuck, right? So you need something that's going to get in the power on the hook set and hold in that power the entire time so you can kind of pull them away or pull them up or whatever. I don't really see that issue so much for sheep's head. So I would actually even be comfortable um, with more of a moderate. I don't know that I would go below that though, because like you said, you have to sink that into the bone on those
Yeah.
fish. And if you don't have power quick, um, it's going to spit that hook and it's just going to be gone. Now, what are you doing? What are you doing for something that has the softer mouth? Or are you even looking at the species like a weak fish? What are you using for weak fish?
I'm going to use more of a faster rod, um, just because I'm going to be casting more, and especially if you're sight casting, 3 feet, 4 feet of water, and some of those spots where they hang around. Um, I want to be able to rip that bait as fast as I can across, just so they can go after it. Um, Again, that's the accuracy thing. Going back to that, I want to make sure I'm going in the same area. If I know where those weak fish are at, I want to be able to put that bait in the same spot every time.
Okay. And are you looking at a different presentation? Let's say you're not using a jig head, right? And
Okay.
let's say you've got let's say you're jigging for them.
Okay.
Are you
Um,
treating that more like fluke, or do you have a specific difference if you're just going to target weak fish?
at that point, It's I'm going to be using my fluke gear at that point, so I'm going to be looking more in that medium area.
Okay.
Um, because I like that little bit of extra bend when I'm fluking. So it's the same concept. If I'm going to be jigging for them, I want that little bit of extra bend.
Okay. Yeah, I personally have found with specs and with weak fish, because of their mouths and because they tear so easily, I really do like the slow and the medium for those, unless I'm casting. If I'm casting, I'm going to a fast or a moderate fast. Again, I don't really like using extra fast all that often. Um, I'm not a finesse fisherman, right? So I tend to, I think, put too much pressure at times on a fish, and where you're risking ripping out the mouth or creating a hole big enough for it to spit that hook. I want something that's going to transfer less power on under, you know, more movement. You know what I mean? So as you said, I need it to be forgiving, and I'm definitely using those slower rods when I'm looking at a fish with kind of like the paper mouth. Now, fluke aside, fluke do kind of have a little bit of that, but fluke, it's all about the bite to me. It's all about the way that they eat, the way that they put it in their mouth, the way that they hold it. And for me, I want it slow because it makes me slow down, right? It makes my hook set less urgent, a little slower. It takes longer for that hook set to actually happen, and that's where I'm doing that. We got a couple of questions in here, so I want to throw this one up. It's from Paul for Great Bay Outfitters. Action being constant, would you consider conventional?
If you're looking at a constant action, it depends.
Why don't we do this? Here's the next one.
Yeah, that
Conventional
that
or
might be better.
spinning for sheep and tog. He's found his hookup ratio differs between the two.
And I'll totally agree. Goes
Okay,
back.
so I want to hear what you say because I bet you we're opposite.
Oh, we're 100% opposite. I know exactly where you stand, and I know where I stand.
I don't know.
I'm spinning all day long. Um, when it comes to jigging sheeps and tog, um, if I'm fishing, a rig, I'm on the conventional rod
Hmm.
or a bait caster at that point too.
Okay. So we are so opposite that we're identical. I do
Yep.
not like fishing for sheep or tog with spinning gear. I'm sorry, with conventional gear, unless I'm fishing a rig.
Okay.
I do, and as a matter of fact, the rod that I've caught the most sheep on is a cheap, um, God, it's like a $35 rod, but it's a
Is it one of the
spinning rod.
5-star rods?
No, no, I forget what it is. It's like, I don't know. It's some old thing I had. I actually just still have it because I'm shocked I never lost it. So I
Okay.
have it only. And look, I've no secret that I don't fish sheep very often, um, but I don't fish this rod often. So I kind of put it aside just for sheep,
Okay.
and it's always rigged up for that. So, yeah. All right. So we're both on spinning. I wonder, Paul, throw in there. Are you looking spinning for sheep and tog? And I'll be flat out. When I'm using jigs, I have a much better hookup rate when I'm fishing spinning. There's like no question about it.
So you're saying you do have a better hookup ratio with the jig on the spinning rod,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's reasons for that. I've noticed it's you can be able to put a little more slack in that line on a spinning rod and just kind of let them take the bait, walk away with it, as opposed to that conventional rod. You got to open up the bail, let a little more line out. It's at least with a jig. Rig's a different story.
Okay. Yeah. For rig, it looks like the three of us are all using conventional for the rig. Well, for
Yeah.
tog, he's using. I just have a problem with those jigs on conventional. I just don't, which is weird because I'll use them on conventional slow pitch for fluke, but not for these. Not for these.
Yeah, no, and I agree with it 100%.
All right, let's hit real quick striped bass because that's going to become real popular real soon. So striped bass, and look, there's 1,000 ways to fish them. Let's start off. Actually, let's start off this way. What rod do you recommend for somebody who's not sure what they want to do, but they want to start fishing from shore, but not the surf? What are you going to be recommending for a good rod to get started with?
I'm sure not the surf. So it depends, and you have to. Are we talking about, you know, 10, 20 pound bass, 30, 40 pound bass? Because again, that makes a big difference. What is that rod going to be able and what it's, capable of handling?
So
Um,
let's put it in as it doesn't matter what the slot is. There are very, very few people that care about the slot. They want to catch the biggest fish possible. So let's
fair
let's
enough.
say let's say the ones that people are targeting, the 36 to 50 inch.
Most of the time it's I'm looking again at that faster rod because I'm looking to get the distance as far as I can and pinpoint my cast every time.
Yeah, I'm using personally a TFO Pro extra
Okay.
fast. I believe it's extra fast, medium heavy, and that's what I'm going to be using for everything. Actually, I even used it in the surf, but it's not what I would use in the surf if I would go out to buy a rod to use in the surf. And I'm not talking bait. I'm there's no bait in any of this conversation about striped bass from me because I just don't bait fish for them. Um, at least in this conversation, we're not talking about that. So I'm using something that's going to be up in the fast to extra. I'll say
Yeah.
fast action TFO Pro, which is a pretty cheap rod. It's $165, I think. It may have gone up in the past year. And the medium heavy, and I have caught striped bass over 50 inches on that. Not, I don't think there were 50 pounds. Um, Actually, I do think it, but I can't claim it because I have absolutely no way of knowing if it was because I didn't even take it out of the water. I just kind of held it there. Um, Yeah, that's what I'm doing for that. Is what rod blanks would you suggest for somebody who wants to go to advanced and pick up a good striped bass rod in that 36 to 50 inch range?
It comes down to preference again. You know, we have, the slingshot. It's a good metal lip rod, very thick, bulky rod. It's going to get the distance where you need it to be, and it's going to work those, plugs a lot better. Um, One of my personal favorites is I'm drawing a blank. We'll get back to that in a minute. Um, but we have a lot of customers that come in for the surf machine because that's a continuous action rod.
Yeah.
Um, and that will damn near throw everything, anything and everything you can think of.
I've talked to a couple of people who said, "Yeah, I use this rod for this weight lure." I'm like, "What?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's only rated for a quarter of that, but I still use it."
Yeah.
They're able to throw anything. They're like, "Yeah, it just means the warranty won't cover it, but I'm still tossing it." Um, yeah, here's a good question actually from Joseph Kiley. Two-part question. Why or what is the purpose of building a rod where the eyes rotate around the blank? And is there any advantage to that? And that specifically is referring to acid wrapped or the hell's the other name for it?
Spiral wrap, acid
Spiral
wrap.
wrap. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk
So
about that?
I think since I got you on that now, I think you can attest to it and why you would want to use it in these situations. Um, when you are bottom fishing, and let's say you're anchored up, especially on double anchor, you're fishing straight up and down the whole day. At that point, that is now causing less fatigue and less roll in that rod as opposed to those guides being straight up. The line is also now aimed down directly to the fish as opposed to being rolled over top of a guide the whole way down on the rod. Alleviates a little bit more stress and it's going to give you a little bit better bite detection because of the way it's aimed towards that fish as well.
Yeah. And a couple of, to dispel what people believe, then it's not true, is you can still cast with them. You can still cast with a spiral wrapped rod. And you can also wrap it backwards. So you have to figure out, are you right-handed or left-handed, because it'll spin it the wrong way in your hand. It'll naturally want to go one way where you're holding it, the opposite way, if that makes sense. So in other words, the eyes wrap one direction on for a left-handed, and then the other direction for right-handed.
It's it depends on the builder who you talk to and what they believe in. I mean, me personally, I notice a little bit of a difference. I don't think everyone's going to be able to pick that needle out of the haystack, but there are going to be the select few that are going to, yeah, but 9 times out of 10, the guy's just excited to get the rod. Um, Me personally, though, I am one of those guys. I believe in, are you left-handed or right-handed?
Yeah, I definitely do. And the reason is this: if you think about it, you're holding it like a conventional, right? I mean, the reel is on the top, and your handle is going to be on the left or the right, right? So if you're already putting pressure on the left part of the rod because you're reeling with your left, where do you want the rod to be pulling as it starts to wrap around it?
Exactly.
And you can absolutely feel the difference on that. And actually, now with a professional rod builder, you probably won't run into this. However, there are a lot of manufactured rods where they don't check this for the spline, and that will automatically cause some roll in the rod as it is. And you're definitely going to have that roll in the rod when you have it acid wrapped, because that spline may not be exactly where it's supposed to be. And I don't want to go too far into what that means, but if you take a blank and you roll it, you can find the spline of the rod, and you should wrap it with. This is debatable. People believe this, and some
Yeah,
people don't believe this. But the rod wants to bend in a certain direction. It just does. And which is actually why you see a lot of people that hold the rod upside down with their spinning reel, and you see it trying to twist sometimes
exactly.
because it's off spline. And, it's rigged wrong, or it's rigged properly, but you're holding it improperly, so it wants to spin over the other way. So you'll actually see that where the rod is, you're fighting it against the backbone that is there for the cast instead of the backbone that is there for the fight of the fish. I definitely believe it, though. I think you need to find that spline on the rod. And
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, and that's again, you know that, and it's a whole nother discussion. We can go into 45 minutes more. Is the spline versus the straight access, and let's just say I build on the spline, and we'll leave it at that.
yeah, I mean, the rods want to roll.
Yeah,
So do you want a rod that rolls in your hand when you're trying to fish? You're trying to pull it in straight, or you're trying to twist it around, so that you're trying to keep it around the motors, and all of a sudden it starts twisting on you. It's like,
yeah,
do you really need that extra strain, especially if you're talking big fish, right?
yeah,
Let's say you're out for pelagics, and your rod wants to spin, or you're on a marlin or a tuna and it wants to spin. It's like you definitely don't want that. But you have the same thing with the acid wrap. So going all the way back to what started this, you have the same thing, because the rod will try to twist if it's not wrapped the correct direction. That's what I will say. Any rod builder can argue with it if they want, but I've had both. As a matter of fact, you've made me the first rod that you made acid wrapped for me was for right-handed, and then the other one is left-handed, and they
yes,
they 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 fish different. Now it doesn't really matter for fluke, because it's not going to twist for fluke, but it
yeah,
would matter if it was a tuna rod, definitely.
exactly.
All right, let's see if there's other questions in here. We wanted to kind of keep this a little shorter. Let's see. All right, Joe is only using the spiral wraps. All right, from James Flynn, is a graphic showing the rod being bent backwards? It is not. It is just it's a bad graphic. So showing the
Yeah,
reels on the wrong side. What it's showing there is under stress with the fish on it. So yeah,
I just realized they're all spin casters.
yeah, it's a good question, and you're correct. What it's showing in the graphic is you have a fish on and you're fighting it that way. So yes, the reel is opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. That's a good point. It's not correct. Not correct. Okay, this one's from Paul again. Cork or foam grip? Sorry if this is like a Ford versus GM question. What's your preference on the grips?
I fish everything. It don't bother me. I mean, I'm even fishing shrink tube with cork tape now on some rods.
Yeah.
So it's again, it's all preference.
It so your preference is what though? If you had to pick one.
I mean, if you're holding a gun to my head, I mean, I guess I'm gonna go cork.
Okay.
I personally like cork, just the feel of it. Problem with cork, gets a little slick, gets a little slippery.
It has to be good
Foam,
cork.
yeah, it does. And even the high grade stuff, it'll fall apart later on down the road, quicker than the foam. Problem with foam is it gets a little smelly after a while. And then if
It
you start
can.
get, yeah, it can, but you really got to take care of it. You start getting into those fancy foam grips like some of the rods that I've done. They're going to fall apart after a while. Keep cleaning them and keep cleaning them. They're going to tear apart. So the cork to me seems to hold up better. I can maintain it better. Um, and it's definitely a Ford versus GM question in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I like cork. I prefer cork almost all the time. Um, the when I don't prefer cork is like I was talking about earlier. If I'm tuna fishing, if we're talking the really large extended large fish shark fishing as an example, I don't have one shark rod or one tuna rod that has cork on it.
Yeah,
Even though I prefer cork, it's foam because foam it doesn't hurt your hands as much. You
no,
can have a easier time on a longer fight. But for everything else, in the perfect world, I have a nice high quality cork on there because I think you get a really good grip. But on top of that, I believe that you can feel the rod and what's happening on the rod a lot better with cork than you can with foam. It doesn't deaden any sensations on there. But the same thing can be said about the shrink wrap. I mean, you're literally touching the rod.
yeah,
Like it transfers everything.
yeah. I mean, if you think about, a lot of guys that, fish the surf rods and have the Paco grips on the surf rods, we have customers requesting that on normal 7 foot and 7 foot 10 rods, that these guys are using on boats. We have those requests now. And you have to think the cork tape is there for a little bit of cushion, but that
Yeah.
space in between that cork tape is blank. So you're directly connected with that fishing rod.
That's an interesting. See, I don't know if a lot of people realize what is underneath some of these reel seats and everything like that. Um, like these rods don't just fit together perfectly and just slide into place, right? I mean, you've got gaps in between a lot of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you do the foam correctly, there's no gap. The
No.
cork, if you do it correctly, there's no gap, but sometimes there is. If you have a rod builder or if you build your own and you don't know how to turn you don't know how to turn wood and you don't make your own custom grips, the the sizes don't necessarily match up with the taper of the rod. So what you end up
No.
doing is using a lot of people use masking tape. So you just keep looping masking tape around the blank until it's to a point where it's going to take up that gap. You put 5-minute epoxy or whatever they're using, you slide it on and over there, which leaves a gap in there. So you don't have that direct transfer of energy between the rod and your hand at that point.
Yeah. And that's basically that it's creating an arbor with that masking tape. So the grip has somewhere to sit. But again, like you said, now you've created a gap between that blank where that grip isn't meeting the blank. So it's not, again, you're not getting that direct feel of that blank.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I have had custom rods, not that you made, just for the record, where the reel seat came off.
Okay.
And to fix that, it's not incredibly difficult, but you have to start taking stuff off, right? And I've
Yeah.
seen where there's just one of them was one thing of masking tape in the middle of the reel seat. and it was just glued in one point. Um, how do you do it for those? For real seed is where you're going to get it most of the time.
Personally, I mean, I prefer the arbors themselves, but at the same point in time, the volume that you have to crank out, arbors aren't necessarily going to be cost effective either. But, for a nice cleaner look and everything like that, as for your peace of mind, a polyurethane arbor is going to be the way to go. However, most of the rod builders still to this day, and I do it, it's ease of time and everything is the masking tape trip. So what you do is you'll glue in your bottom grip or, shrink tube, whatever you're doing. Set up that whole bottom section, your butt grip. Once that butt section's in, I take a paint marker and I mark where the real seat ends and where the real seat begins. I lay two arbors there, and then in between those two on the bottom and the top, I lay one in dead center. So I have three arbors to support the whole thing, and then I'll lay in my epoxy.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good because so you have multiple points of connection there.
Yes.
Yeah, I have one. It's in my garage right now that I took apart. I was like, "There's one freaking thing of tape," and then it was just glued to the grips on each side. I was like, "That is not that. That's why it broke." You know,
It's impressive.
it lasted. I'll be honest, John. It lasted a really long time, probably 15, 20 years.
Okay.
But now I got to take it all apart and cut grips off and everything like that because I cut the one off. I'm like, man, I should have cut the other one off because now I got to slide this whole thing off and reseal it and redo it. But I
There's
can't get an
tricks.
arbor
We
on.
could talk. Nah, there's tricks. We could talk.
Yeah, I think I'm. Yeah, we'll talk about it. I don't even know if it's worth redoing. It was more of a taking a look at it and what the hell happened. I was like, oh my god, it's just so poorly made. But yeah, the guy who made it is no longer with us. He was an old friend of mine.
It might be worth saving then.
It might. Well, yeah. I don't think I'd ever fish it again, though. All right. Are there any other questions in here? Let's see if I missed any. It seems like the acid wrap is something that some people want to give a go on. Yeah, it looks like we're covered. It looks like we're covered on the questions. John, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if you don't mind, real quick, just because I forgot to mention it to you earlier, um, Advanced Fishing is doing our rod demo show
Yep.
up in Seaside Park. It is, I believe, Sunday is the 29th, if I remember, or the 28th. I'm sorry, Sunday the 28th.
I think that's right.
It's 10 to 2, I believe. I don't have the flyer in front of me. Come down, cast some rods. Nice thing is, if you've been contemplating on a custom build, we offer Century rods. We now offer JS rods, and we now also offer Striker rods if you want to get that entry level custom rod. Just something, again, it's tailored to you. We take your measurements how you want it, glue everything into place how you want it, and go from there. Come out, test everything. We also have vendors coming out selling plugs, all kinds of tackles, bags, free parking, free admission as of right now, and we'll be over near the Stewart's Root Beer in Seaside Heights.
Awesome. Yeah, everyone get out there, check that out. There's something about a demo day that people should just really go check them out. It's the same thing as I talked about with Paul earlier with Great Bay Outfitters. Just demo this stuff. Don't go into a shop and just get something that looks cool. Anybody can make any blank look cool. The question is, can you learn about the rod, learn about the composition of the rod, the components and everything like that? And at these demo days, you're going to be able to do that. So it's definitely worth the trip out there. I don't know what the weather's going to be like, but if the weather's not great, what's that?
Guaranteed rain.
Yeah,
Every year it always rains. We're still there, but just bring a raincoat. It's guaranteed.
Yeah, well, if you're not going to be on the water fishing, you may as well be spending money on your next trip by gearing up with some new stuff. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Everyone, John, thanks again. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Next week, we're going to have Captain Kayla Hale on, Chesapeake captain. She was on, I think, when I was with Salt Strong, actually. And she's just, man, she's in on the striped bass. She's in on everything in the northern Chesapeake. So she's going to be on. The week after that, we're going to have Bearded Dad Fishing. So any of you in kayak groups on Facebook or social media, you've seen him out there. So we've got a couple of big guests coming up. I'm still trying to figure out with Honashevsky when he's going to be on. So we got some good guests coming up. John, thanks again for coming on. We'll be back next week, 7:30. Until next week, everyone, get out there, get on the water, and get some tight lines.